In Fire Emblem 3 Houses, students had budding talents and certain skills that you could unlock by continuously training said skill. With enough investment, some characters could learn new abilities they normally would not have access to, and this idea of budding talents returns in 3 Hopes in the form of innate abilities. Today we'll be going over the 12 innate abilities in the game and showcase what exactly each one does. This mechanic is not explained until you stumble upon your first innate ability, and you do so by mastering a certain master class for a unit. You need full 3 stars, which is a lot of grinding, especially if it's a class you may not necessarily use. Everyone has an innate ability, and as a callback to budding talents, the class you need to master matches up with the budding talents from 3 houses. Not everyone had a budding talent in the main game, but it's a neat reference for the ones who do. As an example, Edelgard's budding talent was in Reason, so in 3 Hopes you need to master the Grumry class. Some of these innate talents are very good, while some are kinda meh, so you'll want to know what you're getting before doing the grind. First up is Range Master, which states increases attack range. Very simple and basically does what it says. With Range Master equipped, all your attacks have a bigger area of effect, and this applies to combat arts as well. For those that watch my elemental guide, this is similar to the essence skills enhancing the size of certain moves. Bigger AoE is nice for cleaning up the fodder enemies, and that can save you time when getting those S rank rewards. Range Master comes from mastering the Dark Knight and Holy Knight classes. The ones that get it from Dark Knight are Shez, male and female this time, Hubert, Caspar, and Ash. The Holy Knight units are Marianne and Sedith. Just a reminder, you can take these innate abilities with you to any class, and Range Master is certainly a strong pickup for mob clearing. I definitely think it's worth grabbing, and I haven't been able to test it on a ton of classes, so I'm looking forward to using it more. Next is Exalted Breath, which states when using magic to restore the caster's or an ally's HP, the caster's awakening gauge is restored proportionally. So, Exalted Breath is alright from my limited experience, but it's not a huge game changer, especially because it relies on using healing spells. I thought it might work with light damage, but from my testing, Exalted Breath did not seem to work with light damage spells like Aura. It also doesn't work with the Holy Knight's light strong attacks, although that was expected since it specifies you have to use magic. Basically, you have to use things like heal, recover, or physic. With only 2 combat art slots, you may not want to use one just to heal when we have healing items, and S rank rewards are tied to damage taken, which means if you're just getting beat up over and over, you're not getting those S ranks. The amount of awakening gauge restored did not seem that crazy, but I only tested with level 50-ish characters, so maybe if you can heal for way more, the payoff might be worth it. It also works when healing NPCs and should work with multiple allies healed, so that can improve your mileage out of Exalted Breath. This innate ability only comes from mastering the Holy Knight class, and the users are both Violets, Dorothea, Raphael, and Catherine. I would say the only Exalted Breath user that can really make it shine is Byleth with their Enlightened One class. Byleth basically has multiple perks for going Super Saiyan, Awakened, and the Exalted One class will restore a Warrior Gauge when you heal allies as well. Exalted Breath seems to complement the class, so it might be worth using. Moving on, we have Nullified Magic, which nullifies enemies' offensive magic. This is another simple one, and it's not bad, but certainly not necessary to have. Basically, you completely ignore enemy magic spells. This refers to actual spells enemy mages charge up to use. You can see Edelgard will take no damage when hit by them, and Nullify Magic will proc. This innate ability does not make you immune to all magic attacks though, and you can see that Edelgard is taking damage from the mage's regular and strong attacks. Nullify Magic is great if you have a hard time dodging magical spells, since those can be quite nasty. Nullify Magic comes from mastering Grumry and Dark Bishop, with one exception. The Grumry units are Edelgard and a New Game Plus character. I'm not going to spoil here. I'll leave a pinned comment with a spoiler warning, and I'll list the hidden characters and innate abilities there if you're interested. For the Dark Bishops, we have Felix, Sylvain, Ignatz, Balthus, and Host. The one exception for Nullify Magic is Flame, who gets it via the Dark Knight class. If you need a defensive tool against dangerous magic spells, then Nullify Magic may be worth using. Our 4th innate ability is Ironclad. Nullifies enemy attacks that would break, penetrate, or otherwise bypass the unit's guard. So, while I haven't done a ton of guarding myself so far, nor fully understand the intricacies of the guard mechanic, I would say guarding is decently effective when in a pinch. You seem to be able to hold guard for basically forever, until either a certain HP threshold or certain strong attacks and combat arts break your stance. With Ironclad, that no longer seems possible, at least from what I've seen. Basically, you can guard forever, but actually, we do know that certain combat arts can break through guards, so if the enemy uses those, then you can straight up just not care with Ironclad. Compared to Nullify Magic, which auto blocks spells for you, Ironclad does require you to actually be guarding. This is fine for dangerous situations, but this is a beat 'em up action game, so we want to be the ones whacking enemies around. Unsurprisingly, Ironclad comes from mastering the Great Knight class, and it's only on Ferdinand and Hilda. If you want Guard to be consistent and impenetrable, then Ironclad is worth the slot. Next is Inspiring Agility, enables dash attacks for all classes. Ooh, so does that mean you can get a cool dash like Petra? Well, no. Dash attacks refer to the knockback effect that cavalry units get when they sprint around without attacking for a while. Inspiring Agility lets non-cavalry units do the same thing. First off, there isn't really enemy collision in this game, so you don't need to charge through mobs to get to certain parts of the map. Dash attacks also deal no damage without the smite ability, and even with it, you deal extremely low damage when running into foes. So, what is the point of Inspiring Agility? Well, from what I could tell, dashing into foes does tend to reveal the stun gauge in a reasonable amount of hits. This seemed to be the only benefit, and even then you could do the same via attacking or using combat arts. There's also the fact that a ton of master classes are already mounted, so if you're using one of those, then Inspiring Agility is kinda useless. You can get this innate ability by mastering the Great Knight class for Bernadetta, Dimitri, and Rodrigue. Honestly, I may need to play around with dash attacks more to see if revealing the stun gauge like this is worthwhile. You can do this with any mounted class though. Next up we have Flyswatter, increases both the awakening and warrior gauge fill rates when attacking enemies that have been launched into the air. Flyswatter is nice, especially if you're playing around Windtorn or if you're using a class like the Falcon Knight, which is how you get Flyswatter. Now, I don't feel like it's a huge bump, however, you can see Flyswatter basically always activating in the upper left. I was messing around with Petra's unique dodge, and just by juggling enemies into the air, the 2 gauges do increase, albeit very slightly. Again, I wouldn't say Flyswatter is a massive game changer, but a slightly faster special or awakening activation doesn't hurt anyone. Now, you do need to hit enemies in the air, so this may not be the best ability for every class, but it's pretty awesome on Petra, again because her unique dodge can juggle enemies. The 3 Flyswatter users are Petra, Leone, and Constance from mastering the Falcon Knight class. I would say Flyswatter would be nice if you can find some other abilities that increase the special and awakening gauges. Next innate ability is Gather, brings nearby enemies in front of the unit before starting regular attack 1. This is another simple ability, but I kinda like it. Basically, when you do your first regular attack, Gather sucks enemies right in front of you. It's a bit similar to Yuri's unique action, which is a fitting because Gather comes from mastering the Trickster class. It's a nice ability for the Trickster since they tend to throw enemies around a lot with their combos and class action. If you don't have a ton of range, then Gather can group enemies up in front of you, and you can either continue your strong combos or maybe throw in a big damage combat art. Our gathering tricksters are Linhardt, Manuela, Shamir, and Monica. Linhardt, Manuela, and Monica all have short-range unique actions, so Gather just helps them hit more enemies by grouping them up. As for Shamir, Gather can help apply more ice damage with her unique action, so I would say all 4 users benefit nicely from this skill. Prepare to Die is an interesting ability. Rapidly restores the warrior gauge when HP is at 25% or below and the warrior gauge is less than 1 bar. This is about as high risk, high reward you can get. You need to be nearly dead and have no warrior special ready. But when active, Prepare to Die is kinda insane. You regain your special incredibly fast, and as long as you keep using it while being on low HP, the ability stays active. You can see me spamming special over and over, and it's kinda hilarious. For fun, you can pair up since the partner specials are basically free. Now, whoever created this skill is some kind of comedian. You have to master the War Master class, and it's only for Dudu and Gerald. Of course, come on man, why you gotta do them like that? Well, I'm sure you can definitely have fun with this ability, and it's very impactful when you're on the verge of death. Next up is Sharpshooter, causes critical hits to instantly defeat non-commander units. Pretty self-explanatory, you want as much crit chance as possible and you just be able to one-tap the cannon fodder. You can use combat arts like Deadeye, which has high crit chance. You can use a weapon that boosts critical hit. You got the critical ring, and of course any abilities that add more crit opportunities. You also have perfect dodges, which guarantee critical hits for a couple seconds. You can time a dodge well, and you'll just slaughter the unnamed enemies. You can get Sharpshooter by mastering the Bonite class, and it's for Mercedes, Ingrid, and Yuri. Yuri uses Sharpshooter pretty well with any class you make him because his crest gives him 30% chance to land a critical hit when you use a strong attack. That's just standard gameplay, so no real downsides to bringing Sharpshooter along. If you can get a high enough crit chance or just have multiple ways to proc consistent crits, then Sharpshooter is great for mob clearing. The Bow Knight class in general is pretty good since arrows seem to pierce through mobs, so that's just more crit opportunities. Another innate ability is Heaviest Hitter, causes strong attacks to produce the stun gauge at a high rate. There is actually a regular ability called Heavy Hitter that does the same thing but at a lower rate. In theory, these are perfectly fine abilities for any class since everyone uses strong attacks and more stun gauge appearances means more chances to break them for critical rushes. There are a couple stun gauge related skills that pair well with Heaviest Hitter, so try to be on the lookout for those. You can get Heaviest Hitter by mastering the Wyvern Lord class for Happy, Annette, and Claude. Pretty natural progression for Annette if you wanted to use Crusher anyway. Now for Happy, she can get Death Blow, which increases the time the stun gauge is visible. Seems like a natural pairing for Heaviest Hitter. As for Annette and Claude, I believe they can both get Heavy Hitter as warriors, assuming they stack. Now you got two abilities that increase your stun gauge chances off strong attacks. I believe all three characters can also get Wyvern Rider's Wisdom from the Wyvern Rider class. This just increases stun gauge damage if you continue to use the Wyvern Lord class. Personally, from my testing with Happy, Heaviest Hitter wasn't proccing an insane amount or anything. It happened from time to time, which honestly is fine since again, you're just using strong attacks all the time anyway. Next, Proficient Witchstrike is a very solid innate ability. Calculates damage from all attacks using the unit's magic stat. This is basically the I want to use a mage character with any of the physical damage classes skill. Instead of needing to find weapons like the 11 sword, which basically does the same thing, you're free to equip your best physical damage weapons, and proficient Witchstrike users will always deal magic damage regardless. Now keep in mind, since you deal magic damage, you target the foes with res, so you may not shred enemy mages like a usual physical damage user. Regardless, this ability is great for units who have massive magical growth. To get proficient Witchstrike, you need to master the Mortal Savant class, and it's only for Lorenz and Lysithea, with one more hidden character also being able to access it. I'm not sure if Lorenz has an overwhelming difference between strength and magic, but proficient Witchstrike is basically made for Lysithea if you don't want to be a Gremry. Mortal Savant is so much fun, and it's hilarious to watch Lysithea cut people down with super anime-esque moves. I already know what I'll be mainly doing when I get to my Golden Deer playthrough. Our 12th innate ability is Domineer, and it's only on Yuritsa until you lock some New Game Plus characters. It increases damage dealt to enemies on foot, and you get it by mastering the Wyvern Lord class. So Domineer is pretty straightforward, and I do think it's worth taking because it's a damage boost against anything not mounted. Unfortunately, I don't have a conclusive number on how much damage it provides because there's a variation in every damage instance and it doesn't show up in the upper left. I was getting some weird numbers, but the damage boost seemed somewhere in the ballpark of 50%, which is actually kind of crazy. Keep in mind, Yuritsa has his own damage boost via his unique action, and I have no idea how the damage calculations work in this game. I don't know where Domineer's boost fits in the calculation, but regardless, it seems worth using. Something that isn't mentioned that I'm pretty sure is correct is that Domineer only seemed to work when Yuritsa was mounted himself. If I dismounted, he would instantly lose the extra damage, which I assume meant Domineer no longer was active. This shouldn't be a huge issue since Yuritsa also has his Death Knight class, but if you want to make him a mage or a sword user, then I'm pretty sure Domineer becomes useless. In conclusion, innate abilities are hidden skills you can earn by fully mastering one of the master classes. These tie back to budding talents from 3 houses, but you have the full list in this video, and now you know what each one does. Most of these are generally pretty good, like Range Master, Flyswatter, or Gather. I would say Proficient Witchstrike is the only major playstyle defining ability since it lets Lysithea abuse her absurd magic stat to mess around with other classes, and you can use any weapon you want. There were also a couple oddballs like Inspiring Agility or Exalted Breath. I don't feel like I'll be gunning for those later down the line. Let me know your thoughts and experiences with these innate abilities and what builds have you put together with certain units. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.